Hello everyone, and today I will be taking a look at 6 more Drag Race competitors who had what it took to go all the way. First up, and I know this may be a bit of a controversial one, is Thorgy Thor on All Stars 3. The first few episodes of All Stars 3 show nothing if not that production had absolutely no idea what to do with Thorgy. In episode 1, she does a great job and is given a high placement, but that high placement very easily could have gone to someone like BB or Kennedy if production did not like her. This gives off the impression that, to at least a certain extent, production did like Thorgy. Then, much more importantly, in episode 2, Thorgy is given the worst role in the Rusical, production bans her from improving the role, puts her in the bottom, and eliminates her in 9th place. This obviously gives off the impression that production does not in fact care for Thorgy. With all of that out of the way, I believe that if production had actually cared about Thorgy enough to let her succeed in the competition, there is a legitimate shot that she could have gone all the way. Taking a look at Thorgy's skill set, she is great at all things related to comedy, but then weaker in terms of performing. Looking at the lineup of challenges, if Thorgy does not go in the Rusical, she has a very clear path to make it very far. Episode 3 is the improv challenge, and while she might not have been in the top, I can't imagine her doing worse than the bottom 3. Then for Snatch Game, she was gonna do Lily Tomlin. She probably would have done a solid job, especially better than something like Chi Chi's Maya or Trixie's RuPaul. Then for the ball, based off what we've seen, there's a very high chance that Thorgy is able to outsew Shangela, and since production hated Aja as much as they did, Thorgy can move on to girl groups. On Season 8, Thorgy did a great job in girl groups, and she did a good job in the Eliminated Queens group. I can't imagine that would change if she had been in the competition. Combine that with Ben de la Creme quitting, and Thorgy has made her way to the Final 5. The Final 5 challenge is acting. This is once again something in Thorgy's skill set. I have no doubt that she would do well here, which means that if Thorgy survived the Rusical, there is a legitimate shot that she makes it to the end. While I don't know if she'd be able to win the season over someone like Trixie, I would argue that if production cared about her to even the slightest degree after episode 1, Thorgy has a legitimately great shot at making it to the end. Next up, we have the only first out on this list, Lemon from UK vs. the World Season 1. The only episode we got to see Lemon compete on this entire season is the talent show, where honestly, she did a good job. I know her face was not incredibly expressive, but if you compare that to the other performances, Lemon is fine. This is not an all-time great talent show, but when you compare it to someone like Janie, Jujubee, Mo, or Baga, Lemon should not be in the bottom. If this season were judged fairly, Lemon would probably have been safe, maybe low if they wanted to light a fire, but either way, she is moving on through the season. On Canada Season 1, Lemon was by no means the strongest seamstress, but taking a look at the 2 looks she brought from home, she would probably be fine. Looking at what we saw on the original season, Lemon and Jujubee were flailing this entire challenge. Then you look at Lemon and she has 2 good looks from home. I could very easily see a universe where Lemon is just low for this episode. Then you look at the rest of the challenges, and where does Lemon go home? We have the Rusical, where not only do Mo, Baga, Jimbo, and Jujubee bomb, Lemon has a great runway and is probably in the top 3 performers of this cast. Move on to Snatch Game, and while she might not be in the top 2, there is no way Pangina is not going home here, which brings Lemon to the Rumix. Is there any doubt in literally anyone's minds that Lemon would lose a Rumix? There should not. Lemon is a straight-up rapstress, and as great a job as Blue and Jujubee did this week, if Lemon is here, she is in the top 2 with Mo. All of this to say, based off every unaired runway we saw and everything we know about Lemon's skill set, she had what it took to go all the way. Next up is the inspiration for this video, Valentina from Season 9. The top 4 this season get a lot of credit for how well they did on this season, and while that is definitely fair, I would argue that Valentina is really the only queen performing at their level. She was consistently beautiful on the runway, and generally at least solid at everything. She had a win in the cheerleading challenge, she did a great job in the design challenge, and in the comedy challenges, while she was never in the top, she was always on the higher end of safe. Then at the final 7, everything goes horribly, horribly wrong. She bombs the challenge, she bombs the lip sync, and is eliminated in one of the most humiliating ways ever. That said, if Valentina was somehow able to pull out an Into You level performance and somehow survive this lip sync, I think she could have had what it took to go all the way. The first challenge that Valentina missed was the makeover, and I think she's fine. Assuming that Nina was eliminated in 7th place, Valentina is going to be at worst low because production very much disliked what both Shay and Alexis did. That brings us to the final 5. It is the gayest ball ever, and the top 2 are going to be Sasha and Shay. That leaves us with Peppermint, Valentina, and Trinity. One of the slots in the bottom will be going to Peppermint, which means it is down to Valentina and Trinity. Either one of these queens is going to be eliminated if they land in the bottom here, so it's really down to random chance. I don't know how Valentina would do. Across both of her seasons, Valentina has only had a sew once, so I can't really tell how she'd do here. If it comes down to my decision, I think Valentina would be eliminated in 5th place, but since she has been requested so much for this type of video, I felt that at bare minimum, I had to include her. Going back to season 6, we have one of the most robbed queens of all time, Trinity K. Bonet. It is my opinion, and the opinion of many others, that Trinity was an incredibly underrated competitor all season. She was great in the design challenge, she was good in the acting challenge, she deserves to win the commercial challenge, and she came out of her shell shockingly well in that comedy challenge. Just based off what we've seen, I think it is very likely that if production actually liked Trinity, she could have been walking away with at least 1 win, maybe even 2. Even if you look at her bad performances, she was never really that bad. In the Rusical, while it was not the best performance ever, she was definitely better than April and Darian. In girl groups, once again, it's not the best job ever, but she was definitely better than Darian and Milk. Then in the episode she went home, this might be a hot take, but when you factor in runways and overall challenge performances, she was better than both Adore and Jocelyn Fox. Trinity K. Bonet is definitely a case of production seeing a lip sync goldmine and repeatedly throwing them in the bottom even when it isn't deserved just for entertainment value. And while it was definitely very entertaining and one of the high points of the season, it was not particularly fair. In the event that she is either not in the bottom with Adore, or the lip sync with Adore is a double Shantae, Trinity has a clear path to the end. The first challenge she missed was the makeover, where I have no doubt she would do a good job. She had great sewing skills all season, and was one of the earliest queens to do great on the runway. It is the same situation for the ball. She had a great aesthetic, great runways, and was great at sewing. I really can't imagine her doing worse than Adore, Darian, and Courtney. The final 4 challenge is acting, and while I do think Trinity would do a great job, I don't think there's any universe where production doesn't get rid of Darian, meaning that if Trinity was actually liked by the judges, she had what it took to go all the way. Next up, from All Stars 2, we have Tatiana. After doing a great job in the episode 1 talent show, Tatiana would bomb Snatch Game, place in the bottom with Detox and Roxy, and get eliminated in 8th place. Was this elimination fair? I would argue no. My first argument for that is that going forward, almost every time someone quit Drag Race, that episode ended up being a non-elimination, so that we didn't end up seeing 2 queens go home in 1 episode. This is exactly what we saw on All Stars 8 when Kahana stayed after Heidi quit. With that in mind, even though both Alaska and Katya chose Tatiana to go home, there would be a non-elimination this episode, meaning Tatiana gets to move on to the Rusical. Since every part in this Rusical was written for a specific queen, Tatiana would get the role of either Cleopatra, Joan of Arc, or Frida Kahlo. Based off the fan theories I have seen, Tatiana would likely be getting Joan of Arc, which was pretty much written to be in the top. With that in mind, at bare minimum, Tatiana is getting a high placement this episode, and at most is getting her 2nd win of the season in episode 3. Since there's pretty much no universe in which Jeremy, Carey, and Alyssa are not the next boots, we move on to the final 6 advertising challenge, where Tatiana was originally eliminated for the 2nd time. Taking a look at the bottom 3 performances of this challenge, we yet again have Detox, Roxy, and Tatiana. Roxy Andrews was the worst in this challenge in every category and is taking one of the slots in the bottom, leaving us with Detox and Tatiana. In terms of challenge performances, Tatiana was way ahead of Detox, and in terms of runways, I would put them as even, maybe even leaning Tatiana. Tatiana should have been low or safe, and then Detox and Roxy are the bottom 2. Next challenge is the makeover, and I'm like 90% sure that Detox would get rid of Alyssa over Tatiana, meaning Tatiana has made it to the final 4. Based off everything we know about Tatiana's skill set in the finale and the remix, I think Tatiana would do an incredible job, possibly even rivaling Katya, make her way to the final 3 before ultimately losing to Alaska. Based off everything we saw in the original season, Tatiana was a very underrated competitor who could succeed in pretty much any environment that wasn't being actively rigged against her. Finishing us off, we have the most controversial choice of this video, Jan from season 12. The main thing that most people remember Jan for all season is the face crack moment after the Rusical, and while I definitely understand that, she was an all-around solid competitor for most of the season. Prior to her elimination, she was never in the bottom, and she actually came very close to winning girl groups, the acting challenge, and the Rusical. The Final 8 commercial challenge was not a good showing on Jan's part, and she definitely lost the lip sync. That said, if the cards had played out a bit differently, Jan very easily could have been low for this episode and moved on to the rest of the season, most of which was in her skill set. The Final 7 challenge was the debate, and while I don't think Jan would do great in the branding aspect of this, I think she would do fine in the comedy, and even if she's in the bottom, it is a Katy Perry song. And while Jan is not the strongest lip syncer ever, if I had to pick a queen to do a Katy Perry song, I think I would pick Jan. Next is the makeover, where she would do an all-around solid job. We saw what she was going to do. She has a great mug and a solid aesthetic. At bare minimum, I think she would be better than Jackie and Heidi. The comedy challenge is a bit of a wild card, and if she is in the bottom, she is definitely going home, but I'm not sure she'd be in the bottom. Jada, Heidi, and the queen who shall not be named all did really, really bad in this challenge, so I think Jan could skate by as a safer low. Then we have the remix/Rusical, and while I don't know if Jan could win this, I think she would definitely be on the higher side, and even if she wasn't, I think she could win a lip sync to On the Floor. While there is no way she is winning, I think Jan had what it took to go all the way. Do you want non-Emmy nominated gay shit? Well then you should check out the RuPaul's Drag Race Rejudged YouTube channel and hit subscribe.